When we talk about prosperity, most people immediately think of money. But what if one of the greatest forms of prosperity was one's independence? The ability to think clearly, follow through, and build a life you can truly manage. How does that sound? Today's guest is doing work that transforms entire families. He helps children, teens, and adults move from overwhelm to clarity, from frustration to confidence, and from chaos to control. If you've ever loved someone with ADHD or executive functioning challenges, or you struggled yourself, this conversation is going to shift the way you see what's possible. Let's get into it.
Here we go! Nicole Johnson, Nicole Johnson, Nicole Johnson, let's go!
And welcome to another episode of Prosperity Conversations. I am the Nicole Johnson, and today we're diving into a conversation that will resonate with every parent, educator, or anyone committed to a better future for our young people. Listen, my guest today, the founder of Grow Now ADHD, an organization transforming how we support our children, teens, and adults with executive functioning challenges, is rooted in one powerful vision: helping individuals build the independence and quality that they deserve. You all clap it up and welcome Mike McLeod to the stage. Hey, Mike.
Hi,
How
how
are
are you?
you?
What a fantastic intro. That
I,
was amazing. Oh my gosh. That was
try
so
to
well
do
so
my
well done. I need you to come with me everywhere and just as soon as I wake up, I got to hear that.
Listen, I am all about making sure we feel like a masterpiece over here.
That's right. That's right. That's talent right there. I like it.
Yay. So I am so glad to have you here with us. This is a touchy topic, or at least it can be, especially when ADHD is a condition that has had so much negative connotation over the years. And so we're going to get into that, but I always start one particular place with all of our guests. So we're going to do the same thing with you tonight. So I want you to tell us, what does prosperity mean for you?
Absolutely. So that is really a fantastic question, and really what drew me to the incredible work that you're doing. Prosperity really is your overall independence. That's really the number one thing. Is every single person is looking to live their own life, not somebody else's life, not an influencer's life or their parents' life. Every single human being has a talent, a skill, an interest that nobody else has. Every single person is put here for a reason: to attain independence and to be able to follow their own personal goals and dreams. And that's really the foundation of what we do at Grow Now, is help individuals identify that and pursue that by gaining the skills they need to attain independence and achieving the life of their own personal dreams.
That is wonderful, Mike, because when I talk about what I do with my community, teaching women to define and then achieve their goal of financial freedom so that they can live life on their own terms, it's something to once for one thing that a lot of them don't know what the goal is. Like, they have very surface level things. And so when I say, okay, we're going to bring this out even deeper, I can't imagine someone not having independence because of a condition that they have, and people, they're misunderstood, right? That's really a challenge in and of itself. It's like a challenge inside of a challenge. And so I think the work and we're going to talk about it a little bit more because, Mike and I had some time beforehand in the green room. I'm
That's
special
right.
like that.
Great time. Great time.
And so listen, so Mike, do me a favor. Let's talk about what was the turning point for you that led you to what you do today.
Sure. So I started my career as a speech and language pathologist, or a speech therapist, working with students and young kids all over Philadelphia and all over, the city of Philadelphia and the suburbs, providing, very structured and rigid speech and language pathology. And over time, as a speech pathologist, you end up working in schools and daycares and all sorts of different areas. And you start to learn about all the various struggles of this child. And I was just one person on a large team for each kid. Most kids had an occupational therapist, a physical therapist, a special education teacher, all of those things. And what I was finding was these kids with ADHD, there was really nothing out there, no real program or no real assistance to help them develop the very skills that they were lacking. And I was diagnosed later in life myself, which helped make a lot of issues from my childhood and adolescence make a lot of sense.
Right.
So I dove very deep into all the great newest research, the work of Dr. Russell Barkley and Dr. George McCloskey and Sarah Ward, all the great people in this field, to really learn about the most up-to-date research on ADHD and executive functions. From that research, I developed the Grow Now model of internal skills. We did a year-long research study on it. And from the success of that study, everything sort of expanded from there. So that was really the big turning point, was getting trained in ADHD, doing personal research, realizing just how negative the outcomes were for so many kids with ADHD, because they were being sent to all these inappropriate therapies like talk therapy and counseling and cognitive behavioral therapy and social skills groups, things that just were not moving the needle. And the kids were getting more screen addicted and, getting into more trouble. Parents were getting more burnt out, and these kids needed answers. So that's what I wanted to provide.
And that's amazing, because I can remember the first time my son's child care provider said, "Your son needs to see a therapist." Lady, what? Lady,
Exactly. Good
lady, what?
reaction.
That's it. Mm-mm. And
Yep.
so she was speaking about his speech therapy, and it was probably a year or so later before his first grade teacher said, "I think we need to have an IEP." I was like, "Listen here, now ain't nothing wrong with my kid."
Yes.
And so it does have a very negative connotation on it, but as technology has advanced, research and things like what you're doing have come to the light and actually giving more knowledge about how to handle children and even adults with ADHD and giving them options. And so I love what you said about because that intro was all about you, giving people independence, right? So at this tender age of being on the other side of 50, we have to start looking at, as adults, things don't work like they used to. You don't move as fast as you
Hmm.
used to. And there are some people that I know that are my age and a little bit older, they don't drive, and they're totally reliant on someone else. And I'm going, I don't want that to be me,
Yep.
because of the lack of independence. So, talk to being diagnosed with ADHD. Can you speak a little bit about you said something at some point, some things that had happened in the past start to make sense. Talk about some of those things, because I've heard, kids who have ADHD, oh, they just bad.
Yep.
It was bad. So
That's
what
exactly
were
it.
some things that, now that you understand the diagnosis, that started to make sense with the condition that you have?
Of course, yeah. So just to break it down very simply, ADHD is very, very misunderstood. ADHD is not an attention disorder. It's not about hyperactivity, not about inattentiveness. ADHD is a disorder of executive functioning, and not attention. It's a disorder of executive functioning. It's an executive functioning developmental disorder. And executive functioning is not time management and organization and messy backpacks and messy folders and things like that. It's the ability to self-regulate, to regulate your emotions, your language, your body, your behavior, and also the ability to self-motivate towards non-preferred, non-instantly gratifying tasks like screens. So screens are instantly gratifying. Can you motivate yourself to do things outside of your phone, outside of YouTube, outside of video games? all those sorts of things. So that's why executive functions are the true independent skills, because you need to be able to regulate and motivate yourself to do those difficult things to achieve your dreams. Because as we all know, nothing worth doing is easy, and no growth comes from within the comfort zone. You have to be able to struggle and persevere and be resilient and work. You can't do that without executive functions. When I talk about myself and my past, my ability to motivate myself towards school, and my lack of self-awareness socially, and my, looking back on areas where I struggled. Executive functions is not just skills needed for school. Actually the number one symptom of ADHD is actually home executive functioning and self-regulation towards parents. So it's parents who see the majority of ADHD behaviors, not teachers. So whether it's home, academic, social, executive functions, you can struggle in all areas, 2, 1, depending on severity. And looking back on the past and all the areas where I was sort of behind my peers in development and maturity, that's really what it was. It was my inability to kind of keep up with everybody else, and it really affects your self-image and your self-worth.
Yeah, I can imagine. I'm a kid being behind, and so now that I think about, just based on listening to what you said, and I can think back to some of my classmates that they're just bad. He's bad. She's bad. No, they probably had some. They probably had it if a limited amount, or maybe even an advanced amount of this condition, because the first thing they do is withdraw.
Yep.
Right? They pull back. Or some of them went to the other extreme and they acted out a lot to try to shield, or hide what the deficiencies were. And so it's really hard on the student, it's on the parent. And as a parent, I'm trying to work and provide a living for you. I need you to stop acting up at school. And so that really wasn't, and that was just lack of knowledge on parents' side, this lack of education, no fault of anyone. So I love the fact that you're not only working with the teams or the students, you're working with the families, and that creates, that brings the families back to be whole again. And that's what we need. We definitely need that. So so you work with school districts and across the country, is that correct?
Absolutely. Yeah. So I go around and I perform professional development. So each school gets, professional development funds that are meant for each year. So I'm one of those speakers that come in and assist with professional development and training the staff and the teachers, the therapists, the counselors, even the leadership of the school. And I train various professionals in smaller groups as well. So I come in and really do an in-depth training to give them lots of practical tools to help not only the ADHD kids, but really every student in the school.
So they can learn how, the students who don't have it can learn how to work with their classmates.
Absolutely.
So when you work with the staff, how do you help them prepare or learn to adapt their classroom to a student who has ADHD versus the other 15 or 18 students who don't?
Yeah. So overall, the first thing you have to do is actually train them on the most up-to-date research and reframe it. So they have to understand that it's not an attention disorder. It's not time management organization. Then you have to give them really practical tools that really benefit them. Because, what you tend to see is, you can have a classroom of 30 kids, but 4 of them can have executive functioning delays. And those 4 kids get 90% of the teacher's attention, and the rest of them get about 10%. And that's sort of not fair. So you want to give them practical tools to really make sure that they're just changing the way they give directions, changing the way they format the class, changing the way they test the kids to make sure they're able to give everyone an equal amount of attention. And one of the best ways to do that is to replace verbal prompting with visual prompting. So what we tend to see with teachers is they just talk too much. Sit down, get your book out, put your stuff away, do this, and they're just talking at the kids. If you tell an ADHD kid, if you say to them, if you're a parent and you say to your ADHD kid, go put your shoes on, you're giving them two choices. They could put their shoes on and hear a quick, good job, I'm proud of you, or they could not put their shoes on and have you chase them around the house for 3 hours. They're going to choose the 3 hours because it's a negative attention seeking brain. They want the negative attention. It makes them feel good. It gives them dopamine. So we have to find ways to decrease all of the prompting and all of the talking, replace it with visuals, increase natural consequences to make it more salient in their environment. And really, at the end of the day, the parent training we do is about doing less, and the teacher training is doing less. Because what we're finding today is parents are doing too much and getting burnt out. Teachers are doing too much and getting burnt out, often to no fault of their own. They're under a lot of pressure from leadership and staff and parents and things like that. So a lot of it is really doing less and allowing the kids to sort of create their own journey through your new approach based on executive functioning science.
I love that. I love that. What I gather that the tools that you give to the staff, the teachers, the leadership at the school somehow has something where it translates into them being able to give those same tools and resources to the parents, correct?
Of course, absolutely. And that's the big thing. And that's something we're seeing today with education is the teacher-parent relationship is very broken. So a lot of parents like to blame the teachers when the kid has a behavior or the kid gets a bad grade. Teachers blame the parents, like they just assume that crazy things are happening in the home and the parents just don't care. So that's one of the big things why teachers are leaving the field in droves. A lot of, parents are getting more and more frustrated with their kids, and kids are going to more and more schools, even pulling kids out of school in many different ways. So that's one of the biggest things is we have to repair the parent-child relationship, the parent-teacher relationship, and you're able to do that through, this new executive functioning based approach.
I love that. And so, Mike, I want to pull this together because one of the things that has been most important for me in conducting these conversations or having these conversations with those who answered the call is really discussing how the mission of what you do aligns with prosperous conversations, because we're not talking about the bank account. Y'all don't get me wrong. Now, I am the money lady. I believe in the bank account having an alignment, but I've seen rich people be just as miserable as they could be versus someone who is who's not as well off and quite happy and content in their lives. So this is not about money. So talk to us a little bit about how your mission aligns with prosperity conversations.
Yeah, so the Grow Now mission is all about empowering students, and when you empower students, you empower youth, and you empower parents. And when parents have a greater work-life balance, and they're not just wearing their parenting hat all the time, they can focus on themselves. You told the great story of losing your independence and not being able to drive and being dependent on somebody else. So many parents, parenting has become almost like a crutch for them, where they have to sit down with their kid and watch them do homework for 3 hours, and everything revolves around the kid and the clubs and the sports and the activities and everything. Parents deserve to have a life outside of their own kids. We used to live in a world where kids would play outside for hours, and parents would get a lot of downtime to sit back and put their feet up and relax and get a breather after work. But now that since the rise of screens and the decline of play, kids are now home all the time. And that's leading to a lot of parenting burnout. It's not normal for a kid to wake up, go to school, come home, stay home, and just always be in the house. That's going to lead to, it's like having an annoying little roommate that you just can't get rid of. That is always there. There you go. Like back in the day, kids would go ride bikes for hours and
Mom didn't know where you ate, if you ate. All she knew is you better be home before the street lights come on.
And you always were, and you did it without a GPS. You never came home late ever. always home in
Unless you
time for
were
dinner.
ready to be in, unless you
Yep.
were ready to be that annoying child and be in the house.
Exactly. Yeah. And you did it without a GPS. You did it without a phone. You did it without text message, a smartphone, all of those things, location services, Life 360 apps. You did it all on your own. And that's executive functions, the ability to problem solve. And kids are missing that. That's why this Generation Z that's now entering the workforce, is having a lot of problems. So when you focus on executive functions, you focus on independence, and independence is prosperity.
I love that, Mike. I really, really do. I'm so glad you came and you answered the call to be here with me to have this prosperity conversation, because it gives a different perspective and it lets people know that there is help out there. So make sure you check out Mike's website and go find resources. It's a beautiful site. I love all the different colors. I am a
Thank
color
you.
girl,
Thank
so
you.
I love
Thank you.
all of that. So go check it out and see what resources you may need, or do you need to reach out and connect with him and his organization that can help you. There's no shame here in what you need. The goal is to help you and your children, your child, or even you get back to a whole, happy, and healthy life. And that is the true definition of prosperity. And as I always tell you guys, prosperity is not something that you chase, it is something that you choose. And this has been another episode of Prosperity Conversations. I'm your host, the Nicole Johnson. Until next time.
Wow, that
Thank
was
you.